In today's episode, we're diving into 5 wedding celebrations that took a horrific turn. From a black bear photo op resulting in a mangled guest, to a bridal entry ceremony that ended with an elephant's bloody footprint. But first, we'll take you to Bora Bora, where a groom got dragged underwater just minutes after saying, "I do." It was October 14th, 2014. Bora Bora is not only home to pristine beaches and crystal clear waters, but also a thriving marine ecosystem that attracts tourists from around the world. The island is surrounded by a protective barrier reef forming a lagoon between the shore and deeper ocean. This paradise boasts colorful coral, reef sharks, stingrays, and dozens of tropical fish species. But beyond the reef's edge, where the lagoon opens to the deep sea, larger predators roam, including barracudas and tiger sharks. These reef channels act as underwater highways for animals moving between shallow and deep waters, particularly around dawn and dusk. And thus it was no surprise that Tristan Becker and Lily Romero headed to this island paradise expecting a dream wedding. The couple from Santa Barbara had chosen Bora Bora for its remoteness and natural beauty. 30 close friends and family had flown in for the ceremony, which had just concluded at 5:30 p.m. that evening. As the sun hung low over the Pacific, casting a pink-orange gradient across the lagoon, Tristan suggested a swim before the evening meal. The reception was set to begin later under an open-air pavilion. Light drinks were being served as tiki torches were lit and music played at low volume. The newlyweds entered the water still wearing their wedding clothes, wading out together beyond the shelf where the sea floor begins to fall away. At approximately 6:03 p.m., Tristan and Lily had drifted into a deeper portion of the reef channel, around 150 feet from the shoreline. The water remained calm with high visibility. One of the guests jestingly mentioned that sharks could be out there. Little did they know the guest wasn't wrong. Officials confirmed that shark sightings in the reef channels had increased over the previous 2 weeks, particularly near dusk. No warnings had been posted due to the historically low frequency of incidents, and the locals didn't want their tourism-based livelihood affected. But tiger sharks roam these waters, the largest of their species. They can grow over 15 feet in length and are known for their powerful jaws and indiscriminate diet. Their name comes from the dark vertical stripes found on juveniles and subadults. These sharks are most active during twilight and nighttime hours. Reef channels where light contrast and prey movement are more visible are favored hunting zones. According to Lily, the first indication of the attack was a sudden disruption in the water behind Tristan. A dorsal fin breached the surface, followed by a splash. In the same moment, he was pulled backward with force. The shark clamped onto his right leg, severing it just below the knee. A burst of blood filled the surrounding water. Screaming in terror, Lily tried to grab him back to the surface, but the force underneath was stronger. He was pulled under again. The shark struck a second time, this time from the left side. It delivered a crushing bite to his torso, with deep puncture wounds across his ribs and back. The motion of the animal caused the victim to roll once underwater before briefly resurfacing face down. Probably realizing that this is not its usual prey, the shark did not continue its attack. After the second bite, it retreated, disappearing into the deeper water channel. The entire attack lasted under 30 seconds. On shore, several guests alerted resort staff. A lifeguard entered the water and reached Tristan's floating body in 2 minutes. The victim was unresponsive. His right leg was detached below the knee. Extensive lacerations were observed across the chest, abdomen, and back. No signs of life were noted. Lily made futile resuscitation attempts, but after 6 minutes, she broke down on the sand, halting the procedure. He was officially declared dead on the beach. Marine biologists from the local environmental authority arrived the next morning. Based on bite radius, depth of wounds, and pattern, They identified the likely attacker as a 10 to 12 foot tiger shark. The beach was closed for 72 hours pending safety inspections. Resort management issued an apology and offered extended stays for guests, along with optional grief counseling. Lily Romero returned to the United States 3 days later. No comment was given. To this day, the ferocious tiger shark that ended the 29-year-old's life has never been caught and is still lurking around the reef channels. And sure, Tristan's shark attack on the shore was horrifying. But imagine a 500-pound animal crashing your wedding, this time on land. Up next, Kimberly Dean comes face-to-face with an uninvited, starving black bear. It was September 29, 2012, a day that began like a dream in the heart of the Smoky Mountains. Known not only for their diverse wildlife, but also for their towering peaks, cascading waterfalls, and ancient forests, these mountains offer over 800 miles of hiking trails that explode with color each spring and fall. Wildflowers bloom like scattered paint, and golden leaves blanket the hillsides in a breathtaking display. In a place where time slows, where nature wraps around you like a memory, and where countless couples have come chasing the promise of a perfect storybook wedding. For Kimberly Dean, 45, this wedding was more than a celebration. It was a chance to reunite with old friends and help orchestrate something beautiful. A longtime friend of the bride's family, she had known the bride since childhood and had driven up early from Maryville to help with decorations and logistics. Kimberly had a gentle way about her, patient, soft-spoken, always willing to lend a hand. She loved the Smokies, having grown up hiking its trails in her youth before chronic knee pain limited her ability to roam the mountains she once knew so well. The lodge that day sat nestled on the edge of the park, surrounded by the rich amber and crimson hues of late September. Wooden beams framed the outdoor space, candles flickered on tables, and the crisp air held the warmth of the last fading sun. String lights stretched across the lawn like a ceiling of soft stars. As the ceremony concluded and the celebration began, Kimberly took her seat near the end of the long buffet tables. Her plate held a slice of brisket, 2 fresh rolls, and a scoop of her favorite potato salad. Though others were moving about, Kimberly remained seated, her knee aching, content to watch the joy unfold around her. But joy can turn to dread in an instant. At 6:12 p.m., the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows across the field. A low murmur began at the rear of the clearing. A black bear, large and slow-moving, had emerged from the tree line just 60 feet away. It was sniffing the air, staring intently at the buffet table. Guests whispered and reached for their phones, some filming, others backing away. Kimberly didn't rise. She clutched the edge of the table, her eyes locked on the animal. Many assumed the bear was simply curious, but Kimberly knew enough to not make any sudden movements. She had once worked part-time at a wildlife center and understood that bears, especially black bears, are opportunists. They follow the scent of food, often traveling several miles, guided solely by smell. They watch, they wait, and when emboldened, they strike. Despite their generally shy nature, black bears can become dangerously bold when they lose their natural fear of humans, particularly after repeated exposure to unsecured food or garbage. And while most prefer to avoid confrontation, a hungry or startled bear can turn deadly in seconds. The tension escalated when a teenage boy, panicking, tossed an empty soda bottle in the bear's direction. The bottle landed softly in the grass, but that moment changed everything. The bear's posture stiffened, its ears pinned back, shoulders hunched low. A deep growl vibrated through the clearing. Then it charged, not toward the boy, but toward the source of the smell. Toward the food, toward Kimberly. Guests screamed as the bear thundered across the field, bypassing the buffet and slamming directly into Kimberly's seated frame. She tried to rise, grasping for stability, but the impact threw her sideways. The bear's jaws locked around her shoulder. Kimberly screamed once, a brief and terrible sound, before being dragged from her seat and pulled across the lawn into the woods. Two men gave chase, one of them her cousin David, yelling her name as he hurled the folding chair. Another guest threw a centerpiece, glass shattering as it missed. The bear was fast, and it never hesitated. It disappeared into the trees with Kimberly in tow, her body limp, her cries swallowed by the forest. Emergency services were called instantly. Park rangers already stationed nearby due to prior bear sightings arrived within 10 minutes. The wedding guests were frozen in disbelief. The bride collapsed in sobs. The groom shouted in rage, pointing at the boy, demanding answers. His tuxedo streaked with food and blood. The joy had drained from the night in an instant. Horror had taken its place. Rangers found Kimberly's body just over 260 feet from the clearing, partially buried under leaves and branches, a behavior black bears exhibit when caching food. She had sustained fatal injuries to her neck and chest. Investigators concluded that she had likely died within minutes, either from massive blood loss or a punctured lung. Her blouse was torn and claw marks raked across her ribs. The bear hadn't eaten her, it had simply taken her. The wedding was called off. The lodge closed its doors for the season. Guests left that night in stunned silence, their formal clothes stained, their hearts broken. Wildlife officials combed the area over the next 3 days. Several bears were trapped and tranquilized. One, a large adult male, was euthanized after evidence from its stomach confirmed the presence of human remains. The officials made it clear, a bear that links humans with food becomes unpredictable and dangerous. There are few second chances in those cases. Kimberly's death was one of the most violent bear attacks in Smoky Mountain history. And yet, what haunts those who were there was not just the brutality of her end, it was the quiet kindness she carried with her into the mountains that day. The way she'd spent hours arranging flowers, the warmth of her smile, the way she stayed seated not out of fear but because she didn't want to cause a scene. Her restraint, her stillness became her undoing. Though Kimberly's favorite Smoky Mountains weren't the only place where nature crossed a line meant for love. While attempting to capture another couple's happiest moments, Urine Voss falls prey to a lion on the prowl. It was May 6, 2019. Every spring, the Okavango Delta Islands erupt in color as wildflowers bloom in brilliant contrast against the muted earth tones. Lions roam freely here alongside elephants, hippos, and more than 200,000 other large mammals, making it one of the most biologically rich regions on the planet. It stretches across northern Botswana like a living mosaic of life. Meandering waterways, lush wetlands, and golden savannas teeming with movement. For photographers, it's a siren song, a place of staggering beauty, raw wilderness, and the promise of moments that can't be staged. The couple that the 34-year-old Dutch photographer Urine Voss was photographing had chosen the location not just for its remoteness, but for its cinematic splendor. They wanted something wild, something unforgettable. Urine, who had built a career capturing intimate human stories set against the grandeur of nature, was the perfect choice for the job. That afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky and painted the plains in honeyed gold, the safari vehicle eased to a stop along a dirt track. Inside, the bride adjusted her veil with careful fingers, her nervous excitement reflected in the groom's restless movements. Their wedding was scheduled for the next day, but this shoot, set against the backdrop of Botswana's untamed wilderness, was meant to be the emotional prologue of their love story. Urine stepped lightly out of the vehicle, camera already in hand. He moved with a quiet purpose, scanning the horizon for that one perfect angle. The couple remained inside the truck, their attire a palette of ivory and sand, creating a striking contrast against the Delta's greens and golds. Everything had been meticulously planned. A seasoned guide with military experience had scoped the terrain, safety zones were marked, and animal activity had been monitored. About 10 meters from the vehicle, Yoren knelt in the grass. The sounds of the delta were all around him. Birdsong, insects, the distant grunt of hippos. He framed the couple in silhouette against the descending sun, adjusting his lens in careful, practiced motions. He didn't hear the danger moving toward him. None of them did. From within the tall reeds nearby, a lion stalked silently. It had been tracking a herd of impala, but their sudden dispersal left the predator searching for a new opportunity. Lions are apex predators whose strength lies in both stealth and sheer explosive power. They typically weigh between 330 and 500 pounds and can launch short-distance sprints up to 50 miles per hour. Unlike endurance hunters, lions prefer to ambush prey, relying on cover and proximity to strike with deadly efficiency. Their jaws exert a bite force strong enough to crush bone, and a single swipe from their powerful forelimbs can topple prey much larger than a human. Attacks on humans are rare but not unheard of, especially when a lion is agitated, confused, or encounters something outside its usual experience, such as a crouching figure in open terrain. To a hunting lion, stillness and low posture can resemble wounded prey. The air split with the sudden burst of movement. In seconds, the lion surged forward, muscles rippling under its coat, eyes locked on its new target. Yoren turned just in time to glimpse the blur, then it hit. The force knocked him off his feet, camera flung aside, body crumpling under the weight. The lion's jaws clamped down on his nape, puncturing flesh and bone with terrifying ease. From inside the vehicle, the bride screamed, her voice rising above the chaos. The groom shouted, his words lost in a panic. The guide reacted swiftly, raising his rifle and firing a warning shot into the air. The sound cracked across the savannah, but the lion didn't flinch. Blood pooled into the dirt as Yoren was dragged backward through the grass, his body limp, breath shallow. The guide stepped forward with deliberate calm, rifle aimed high. He shouted again, fired twice more. Only then did the lion drop Yoren, circling warily before disappearing into the reeds from which it had come, swallowed once more by the tall grass and silence. They reached Yoren within seconds, but the damage was done. His spine had been crushed in the initial impact, and deep wounds in his neck and chest told a story no one wanted to hear. There was no chance of saving him. As the last light faded from the sky, Yoren Vos died en route to the hospital, his final moments soaked in the land he so dearly loved to photograph. Officials from Botswana's Department of Wildlife and National Parks arrived within hours, setting up a perimeter and tracking the lion responsible. It was identified as a dominant male, known to the area, respected for his skill and size. The animal was not put down. In Botswana, the preservation of natural behavior takes precedence over reactionary culling, especially when humans knowingly enter wild spaces. Those closest to Yoren spoke of a man who understood those risks better than most. His life had been a journey through wild spaces, always searching for beauty even when it came with danger. He didn't just photograph nature, he respected it, lived alongside it, and ultimately died within it. Yoren Vos's death was a reminder of how nature reclaims its ground when caution slips for even a moment. For the Rathore family, it wasn't a lion in the delta grass, but a silent pack of stray dogs lurking in the dry riverbeds of India that turned their celebration into tragedy. It was March 2nd, 2020. In India, numerous villages burst with color during wedding seasons, creating a stunning display of cultural beauty, and our story is set in one of its regions. Rajasthan has a wide array of wildlife and towering forts, sprawling deserts, and vibrant cultural traditions. It boasts over 300 ancient temples, with the famous Kamimata Temple housing thousands of rats that are worshipped by devotees. It's a place of unparalleled traditions that every family dreams of celebrating in. The Rathore family headed to a neighboring village for a wedding celebration. The sounds of drums reverberated through the narrow dirt paths as women in saris, a traditional Indian garment, sang devotional songs while men marched alongside a cart heaped with garlands, sweets, and ceremonial gifts. At the head rode the groom, Vinod Rathore's younger brother, seated atop a decorated horse, his crimson turban secured with a gleaming brooch. The groom's procession was to journey nearly 4 miles by foot to the bride's home. Beneath the mid-morning sun, the atmosphere filled with laughter and rhythm. The scent of spiced vegetables and cooked lamb floated through the air, rising from clay pots tied to the back of a cart. Vinod walked beside his wife Meena and their 8-year-old son Arjun. They wore simple but pristine kurta pajamas, while Meena's glass bangles clicked softly with each step. Arjun moved ahead of the group, darting between relatives and friends, waving a steel dish filled with fried meat pieces that had been passed down from the cart. As noon approached, the heat intensified. The sun pressed down with dry intensity, and the group's pace slowed. Dust clung to their ankles as they descended into a dry riverbed, an area known locally as a makeshift dumping ground. Villagers had previously expressed concerns about the space. Meat vendors, avoiding disposal fees, regularly discharged scraps in the brush along the riverbed's edge. The smell of blood and flesh had drawn scavengers to the site for years. The procession failed to notice that the underbrush served as a den for a pack of stray dogs. Approximately 12 to 15 mangy, neglected dogs lay beneath the shade of scrub trees and broken thorn bushes. Some limped, others bore open wounds or were visibly emaciated. In India, packs of stray dogs often form loosely organized groups driven by access to food rather than familial bonds. When food sources are scarce, especially in rural areas where garbage and meat scraps accumulate, these dogs can become increasingly territorial and aggressive. In larger numbers, their natural fear of humans diminishes, and they may engage in coordinated attacks, especially when emboldened by hunger or competition. Their eyes followed the group with calculated hunger. As the aroma of the meat wafted closer, their bodies tensed. Arjun, still running slightly ahead of the adults, had unknowingly become the focus of their gaze. The first dog attacked in silence. It lunged from behind a bush, teeth bared, and bit into the fabric of Arjun's pant leg. The boy shrieked and stumbled backward, dropping the metal dish. The meat tumbled onto the dry earth, and the rest of the pack surged forward. Within seconds, the child was surrounded. Meena, hearing her son scream, dropped the water pot she was carrying and ran forward. Vinod sprinted beside her, grabbing a fallen branch and swinging it with force. The dogs snarled and snapped. Some turned their attention to the adults, teeth flashing, but most stayed locked on Arjun. The boy had fallen to the ground, arms over his face, and disappeared beneath the blur of fur and flailing limbs. Other members of the wedding party scattered. Some ran toward nearby farms calling for help, while others picked up stones and threw them, hoping to break the frenzy. In the confusion and dust, Vinod, Meena, and Arjun were quickly separated from the rest of the group. When villagers finally returned with iron rods and sticks, they found a gruesome scene. Vinod lay bloodied and motionless near the thorny edge of the riverbed. Deep puncture wounds marked his legs and neck, and the dirt beneath him was dark with blood. Meena's body had collapsed beside her son. One arm was still draped around Arjun's tiny frame in a protective curl. Her face and chest had sustained devastating injuries. Arjun's small body had been savaged, his clothing torn, skin ripped, limbs twisted unnaturally. The three were rushed to the nearest clinic in the back of a farmer's jeep, but none survived the journey. Medical staff at the small facility confirmed all three had died from traumatic blood loss and shock. Local authorities arrived the next morning. Animal control officers and police combed the riverbed and surrounding scrubland. Over 40 stray dogs were captured in the following days. Many were euthanized immediately, their aggression deemed too dangerous. Though animal welfare groups protested the swift culling, villagers had lost all patience. For years, they had petitioned municipal officials for help with the stray population, only to be ignored or given hollow promises. Stray dog overpopulation in India is a persistent issue. Millions of dogs roam freely across urban and rural areas alike. The combination of poor waste management, insufficient veterinary infrastructure, and cultural tolerance toward street animals had created a volatile situation that increasingly puts lives at risk. The wedding procession never reached the bride's home. The celebration had dissolved into a cautionary tale, and in that silent stretch of scorched earth, where scraps had once drawn scavengers unnoticed, the cost of inaction became tragically clear. 3 lives were gone, not to wild animals, but to a threat hiding in plain sight, born of human disregard, fed by waste, and multiplied by silence. Vinod and Meena had only stepped forward to save their son. Sarita Goyal stepped onto the elephant to live out a dream, and the celebration never reached its end. It was February 22, 2016. Udaipur, with vast shimmering lakes, towering palaces, and ancient temples, had long been a dreamscape for those chasing grandeur. The lake palace floated like a marble illusion on Lake Picola, while royal residences and centuries-old stonework whispered stories of kings and queens. Here, weddings weren't just ceremonies, they were legacies. The city bloomed year-round with bursts of marigold, music, and celebration, a place every bride imagined walking into her future. So when 28-year-old Sarita Goyal arrived in Udaipur that day, she didn't expect just a wedding, she expected magic. The Goyal and Sharma families had spared no expense. This was more than a marriage. It was a moment designed to echo through generations. Sarita was radiant. Her red bridal gown shimmered with golden embroidery, catching the evening light as she adjusted her crown and glanced down at the courtyard below. There, musicians played with escalating excitement. Her heart beat with anticipation. Within minutes, she would make her grand entrance, riding not in a car, not on a horse, but on an elephant. Her arrival would be majestic, echoing the grandeur of queens and ancient processions. The idea had come from her father. He had insisted on something grand, something unforgettable for his daughter. He had declared that a car was too plain, a horse too common, and that only an elephant would do justice to the occasion. He had envisioned a scene straight from the pages of Rajasthani history, one that spoke of royalty, reverence, and reverie. The elephant, a massive female named Rani, had been rented from a nearby sanctuary. Rani had worked weddings before, and handlers reassured the Goyals that she was calm, experienced, and used to the bustle of human celebration. Her tusks had been painted in vibrant floral patterns. Rich silken cloths in hues of crimson and gold draped her flanks. A golden howdah, a ceremonial seat, was fastened to her back with thick leather belts, padded with cushions for comfort. As Sarita was gently helped into the howdah by 2 assistants, the crowd erupted in cheers. Camera flashes lit up the dusk like stars descending from the sky. Guests applauded, shouted blessings, and threw rose petals into the air, which floated around her like a celestial veil. The procession began slowly, winding its way through the narrow street flanked by dancers, drummers, relatives, and friends. The elephant moved with heavy grace, each footfall rhythmic and deliberate. It felt almost surreal, like living a dream crafted from centuries of culture and love. But then, without warning, the dream turned to disaster. Near the venue's main gate, just as the procession was turning into the main courtyard, someone in the crowd decided to heighten the festivity with firecrackers. The idea, presumably, was to announce the bride's arrival with grandeur and flair. Strings of celebratory fireworks had been set aside for this very moment. One firework, however, misfired. Instead of launching skyward, it exploded at ground level mere feet from the elephant's hind legs. The sharp, unnatural pop was accompanied by a flash of sulfur and a sudden cloud of smoke. Elephants have extremely acute hearing and are highly sensitive to low-frequency vibrations. Sudden, loud noises, especially explosive sounds like fireworks, can trigger a fight-or-flight response. Even trained elephants conditioned for crowds and music can panic when startled by something unexpected. In the wild, such a noise might signal danger, like a gunshot or predator attack. In captivity, it can confuse and terrify them. The blast didn't just startle Ronnie, it overwhelmed her senses in a flash. Her survival instincts kicked in and everything familiar, the crowd, the music, the decorated streets, suddenly became a threat. She reared up with a thunderous trumpet, lifting her trunk high and jerking her head to the side. The noise, the smoke, the sudden flash, it was all too much. Panic coursed through her massive body. She began to twist and pivot wildly, her handlers shouting in desperation. The carefully orchestrated celebration was now a frenzy of screams and chaos. Sarita clutched to the side of the howdah, her fingers digging into the edge as she tried to keep her balance. But at that moment, one of the leather belts securing the seat gave way. Her body pitched forward as the seat shifted. She fell 15 feet to the ground. The impact was brutal. Her head struck the stone-paved path with a sickening thud. Gasps rose from the crowd, followed by stunned silence. But the horror wasn't over. Still panicking, Rani turned again. Her massive foot came down, once, twice, on the very spot where Sarita lay. A cracking sound echoed through the courtyard. It was the sound of something precious breaking. Bone, breath, future. Guests rushed forward in panic. The groom, Rajiv Sharma, sprinted from the venue gate toward the chaos, his face contorted in shock. But venue security held him back, fearing that the elephant might change again if further agitated. Rani was still trembling, her handlers working with long poles and calm voices to soothe her back into stillness. When they reached Sarita, she was unconscious. Blood pooled quickly beneath her head and chest. Her legs were both crushed, flesh mixing into the courtyard tiles. Her red gown, once gleaming, now soaked in crimson for reasons no celebration should ever witness. An ambulance was called immediately. As the vehicle pulled away with its sirens blaring, the courtyard stood in eerie silence. The music had stopped. A celebration had collapsed into quiet disbelief. At the hospital, Sarita was pronounced dead on arrival. The fall had caused fatal head trauma, and the trampling crushed her ribs and limbs beyond repair. Rajiv collapsed when doctors delivered the news. His bride was gone on the day they were to begin their life together. Her mother's cries echoed through the corridors. Her father stood silent, hollowed by grief. Photos of the bloodstains sewn beside the elaborately decorated elephant made national headlines. Questions followed. Was it the fireworks, the sanctuary, the planner? Who was to blame? An investigation was launched. Rani the elephant was moved to a forest reserve. The sanctuary owner claimed she'd simply reacted to fear, that she wasn't violent, just a victim of chaos. Back at the venue, garlands sagged from doorways, tables sat untouched, food growing cold, gifts unopened. A celebration meant to begin a lifetime had ended in silence. Thanks for watching. If this story gripped you, there's another waiting on your screen just as haunting. just as unforgettable. We'll see you there.